Hi, I'm Ed Brooks with the D1 Leadership Group. I have with me David Clancy, who's running for the D1 Council position, and we have a couple of questions for David. So, David, the first question we have is what do you see as the top two issues that face D1 neighborhoods?
I see the top two issues right now that affect all of our neighborhoods here in San Jose. First of all is the budget, and secondly, jobs. For jobs, I'd like to see some dramatic permit reform to make it easier to get conditional use permits and other permits here in the city. San Jose is known as the most hostile city to work with in the county, and for that to change with the business community, we need a true business perspective on the council. I work in commercial real estate. I've worked with hundreds of businesses here in the area, and I've worked with the city's planning departments, zoning, and public works on several occasions. So I'll utilize those experiences as the customer to help truly transform San Jose's atmosphere, environment, to make it more business friendly, so that we can bring more jobs back to San Jose, because frankly, businesses provide the jobs. And in regards to the budget, we need to have a serious look at the pay and pensions of all employees in San Jose. We need to reevaluate that where necessary to bring it in line with the private sector. And if that's made impossible by the unions, then we need to look at outsourcing those duties to the private sector, or at the very least get competitive bids to bring to the negotiations table. As I mentioned in the speeches, the police and fire represent 80% of our overall pay and benefits of all the employees in San Jose, even though they only make up 1/3 of the workforce. And I know it's difficult to talk about compensation for those who keep us safe, because that's how we value them, but they're bankrupting the city. So it needs to be addressed. Several other cities have looked at this. San Carlos has talked about bringing in the county services, county sheriff, county fire. That's something that I would look at. That's something that I think that those bids would perhaps bring a little bit more common sense to the table when we're dealing with the police and fire unions. They are paid, starting pay for police here in San Jose is nearly double that of Los Angeles police officers. They even have a second-tier position known as the Los Angeles Security Patrol, who patrol neighborhoods with a firearm and make $2,500 to $3,000 a month. So at most $36,000 a year. That's certainly not what I'm advocating, but I think there is a happy middle ground there. I think that the police force in San Jose needs to see the budget crisis as people do in the private sector, and see that if pay cuts aren't made, the current plan of reducing 162 police and fire employees is going to happen. So if it's a true brotherhood, this union, you'd think they would want to protect their friends' and coworkers' jobs. So I'd like to see that resolved in a common sense manner. And the biggest hindrance to that is the city charter's mandatory binding arbitration clause when dealing with the police and fire unions. And the only way that's going to change is if either we can get 6 members of the city council, 6 members of the city council to vote in favor of amending the charter. Sorry, 2/3 of the city council to vote for the amendment. Alternatively, I'd like to put it in the hands of the voters themselves, put it on the ballot. It's always funny when we see so many sales tax and other tax increases come on the ballot here in the Bay Area. And I'd like to put such a crucial matter in the voters' hands and see them handle this issue.
So that's about the budget priorities and what you'd cut. The third item is SNIs are currently funded, but the other community services through the community centers, things like Starboard Park, the youth center, are not. How would you prioritize things like the community centers, libraries, and things like Starboard Park in the city budget?
It's a real challenge when we're talking about cuts. I'd really like to see the community centers remain open. They're talking about closing the majority of them. And library hours cut down to 3 days a week. So that's what they're talking about now, and I think that's a crime. Besides the fact that we spent so much money building and developing these services, to see them just go away is an absolute shame. In prioritizing them, I think the community centers are the most important, obviously. The most services are provided there. And I think the community pools and the senior center programs are very important. But I'd like to avoid those type of cuts altogether. I think if we make the needed cuts with our city's labor unions, we can avoid cutting these programs. So the challenge is to see true concessions from the police and fire unions because they make up such a large percentage of our payroll. The municipal federated workers, everyone else pretty much, for the city make up about 2/3 of our workforce, and yet they only make 20% of the salaries and pensions. Now, I think they should see, all of our employees have seen a 64% rise in pay and benefits of the last 9 years, so I think they have their part to play too. They need to make some sort of concession. But because they have a 75% of pay pension plan instead of the police and fire's 90%, and they're making much lower salaries, I think it's a minimal cut, maybe 5 to 7% cut by the MEF. The police and fire really need to lead the way. As I said in the speech, the vast majority, over 80% of police and fire employees make $120,000 to $200,000 a year last year. And retirees are leaving with 6-figure annual pensions and 6-figure vacation and sick pay cash outs. That was never the intent of sick days and vacation time. And I think it's important that our officers, especially with such a high stress job, take vacation time, so that they can do their best when they're on duty. But really, I'd like to avoid making those cuts if we can by negotiating with a firm grasp with the police and fire unions.
So finally, is there anything you'd like to set the record straight on from the forum today, or anything else that's gone on in the campaign?
Well, I'd like to say, I don't want it all to be negative. I think that the incumbent has done a great job with the neighborhood associations. I applaud him for his efforts there, and I think that I would like to build on that. No, I think that everyone's been pretty honest about where they stand, and I would love to have the people's vote if they put me in office, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, David, for joining us.
Thank you.